I saw Joelle had a reel about sugar and addiction, and while it's not the same as drug addiction, I'd like her to dive deeper into this subject. Why does our body crave it, and so on? We'll be diving into this and so much more in today's Q&A episode. Let's get it. All right, sugar, the whole sugar and addiction debate it goes back a few years now. I think people are starting to understand it a little bit more, but clearly it is still something that is very misunderstood. So I will let you lead here, Joelle, since this is something you have posted about multiple times over the years.
Yeah, I think, look, none of us are like huge sugar advocates. We are all team like minimize your, inclusion of ultra processed foods in your diet and so on. But I don't love the argument that sugar is as addictive as cocaine. That's usually what we hear it in reference to. We hear like sugar is addictive, but I also almost always hear it in relation to cocaine for some reason. I don't know how cocaine got like the became the scapegoat drug for that. But I think if we're going to talk about addiction and sugar addiction, we actually have to first talk about drug addiction. And so I'm going to channel my high school health teacher in me. For those that don't know, I used to teach high school health. So allow me to have a high school health ed lesson with you, the way that I honestly would kind of teach it with my students. So I'm going to talk specifically about really any hard addictive drug, i.e. cocaine. So number one, cocaine or any other hard addictive drug interferes with our brain's ability to regulate dopamine, which is our happy, euphoric neurotransmitter. Now, as you come down from a drug-induced high, your brain chemistry causes you to desire more. And as you continue to use the drug, your body builds up a tolerance, and thus those chemical imbalances in your brain become greater. As a result of that tolerance that you've built up, and I'm sure many people have heard of like drug tolerance or alcohol tolerance or caffeine tolerance even, but as that tolerance gets built up, your body requires you to then use larger and larger amounts or doses to continue to achieve the same high or the same feeling that you used to feel from smaller doses. And so, as you can imagine, this is how people end up, of course, in overdose situations. Obviously, I'm greatly simplifying here, and this is a very serious thing. But when we no longer get high from the amount that used to make us high, we need more of it in order to get that same effect. So the more you use, the more you build your tolerance, and then the more you continue to worsen that chemical interference, that dopamine uptake, and those disturbances in your brain capacity and brain chemicals. So eventually you need more of the drug just to get to baseline, just to feel normal. And so you could think about that in terms of like a functional alcoholic or a caffeine addiction, where maybe you need 3 cups of coffee just to like function, not to be hyper and like ready to run a marathon, but just to function because now you are dependent on it. So at this point, you'll need more extreme amounts just to get that dopamine high that you're craving. And as you've probably seen, if you've ever like had a family member or a friend, or maybe even like seen it in TV shows, people can become willing to do just about anything to get that fix and just about anything to get their hands on that drug. And if they can't get their hands on that drug, they might go through withdrawal symptoms. They might have anxiety, agitation, insomnia, sweating, fatigue, nausea, vomiting. Like withdrawal symptoms can be wild. That, in a nutshell, in a very simplified version, is the cycle of addiction. It's what we'd call the cycle of addiction, at least the way that I teach it in health class. You take the drug, you build a tolerance, dependence forms, withdrawal symptoms if you stop them. These are all hallmark signs of an addiction. So now let's bring it back to sugar after that brief little drug education lesson. Let's bring it back to sugar. Is it true that sugar increases dopamine levels, the happy juice in our brains? Yes, that is true. But so does everything else that makes us feel good or makes us feel happy, i.e., working out, listening to good music, having sex, laughing with friends, Those are all things that increase dopamine levels in our brain. So, needless to say, drugs can cause those same changes in brain chemistry, but in a much more drastic manner. So, there have been studies and research on humans and sugar and addiction. So, what we can see from the research that has been done is that humans do not build up a tolerance to sugar like drugs. Humans do not depend on sugar to function like drugs. Humans do not suffer severe psychological or physiological or physical symptoms if they don't have it, like they would with drugs. So, is it addicting? Does it go through the cycle of addiction? No. Scientifically speaking, depriving yourself of sugar is just like depriving yourself of anything else non-drug related. So wanting to like pound some cookies isn't a withdrawal symptom or dependence. It is just a desire. It might be a strong desire, but it's not an actual addiction. Now, while reducing or eliminating sugar from your diet might elicit or eliminate certain thoughts or feelings or cravings, it is not scientifically comparable to drug withdrawal or drug dependence. Is sugar delicious? Yes. Can it make us feel good in the moment? Yes. But it is not a drug, which means that personal responsibility and self-control are still important factors here. And I think that that's a piece of this. Like, does sugar get called addictive to take away the personal responsibility aspect of it? If it's addictive, then there's a reason I have no control, because addiction is a disease.
I agree with that.
But sugar addiction is not a thing.
There's a whole mental like mindset side to it that on one hand, I think people kind of use the word addiction, like sugar addiction, as just like, you know, people are extreme. They're extreme with their diets. They're extreme and like to think in the extreme sense of everything. So I think they use that term very loosely, not fully understanding what the word addiction means. But on the flip side, like you said, I think it gives people a reason to blame as far as why they constantly crave these things. And don't get me wrong, I think when we talk about cravings and sugar, like, yes, the more sugar and like highly palatable, highly ultra processed foods you eat, the more you're going to want to eat. That's how they are designed, but you are not addicted to them. So that's just like the big discrepancy between cravings and addiction.
Yeah, like, of course it can elicit strong cravings and it's very easy for people to overeat it. But if we're getting technical, it does not meet the scientific definition of an addictive substance.
It's just highly palatable. It's highly desirable. And that's why moderation becomes such a gray area. This is why we talk about it so often. It's like, oh, I enjoy things in moderation. Well, having a little bit every time you want it, that's not moderation. Like a small bowl of ice cream every night is not moderation. That's not you balancing this within your healthy lifestyle. That's why, one example or one way to kind of approach it and understanding it's not an addiction is we don't keep things in the house regularly. If we want ice cream, we will go out for ice cream. But what we're doing is placing this friction block in front of that. So it's only when we truly want it, we will go and make that effort. It's not, I'm bored. I kind of want to, I'm feeling it. Let me just have a bowl of ice cream with some hot fudge and some sprinkles and throw this all on because I'm feeling it right now. And I want to watch a show and this is just going to be my routine. Nothing wrong with that once in a while. But when it's right there, every time you want it, you're going to go grab it. And when you have it regularly, you're going to continue to want it. You know it's there. You know that dopamine hit is coming. It's not to the same level of addiction, whereas I'm not going to go do everything that I, possibly can to get this thing. Like I'll live without it. And then the less frequently you're having it, the less you're craving it. It's not in the house. It's not easily accessible. Just little speed bumps you guys can throw in the way of those things. If you fall into this, I think I'm addicted to sugar kind of category. One, it's not a thing. And two, there are very reasonable steps you can take to reduce that.
I would also just one last add about sugar, because I think it's become, there's that like the pendulum always swings, right? To like, sugar's fine, just fit it in your macros, to like, no, don't have sugar. Actually, it is bad for us. And I'm always like, hey, let's be somewhere in the middle. But one thing that I would just add about sugar is that one of the main issues is not that sugar is like inherently poisoning us. It is hyperpalatable, which means it's easy to overeat. It's easy to spend a lot of calories on it. But the other piece of that is that mainly one of the reasons we want people to limit, let's say, their added sugar intake is mostly due to what we would call a crowding effect, meaning you are crowding out the other nutrients in your diet because calorically you're having a lot of non-nutrient dense things. So if I need 2,000 calories a day and I fill 1,500 of those calories with cookies and cake and brownies and whatever, it's not that the sugar is inherently causing the issue. It's that now I'm only consuming 500 calories for the day of maybe my protein and any nutrient density. And so you're crowding out the nutrients that you would be having if you weren't having sugar, which is not nutrient dense. So that's the other like just thing that I wanted to bring in about sugar. It's not like you're going to have a cookie and it's going to like destroy your health or destroy your body composition. And that's where I think moderation does come into play, and like what you are consistently doing the majority of the time. You know that that night out at ice cream is not going to change anything about your health because you've already ate protein at all your meals that day. You've already gotten in your fiber count for the day. You've already hit your color goals and your fruit and vegetable goals for the day. So you're not letting the ice cream at the end of the night with your family crowd out the rest of your nutrients.
I think we used to call this macro hoarding back in like the IIFYM days, where people would literally just like eat the bare minimum of like the most minimal calories for the first part of the day and then save all their macros for like this insane epic cheat meal and be like, oh, I still hit my macros, I'm good, when in reality they were super low on fiber and just didn't eat balanced throughout the entire day. So macro hoarding is what we used to call it.
I'll just jump in real quick. I agree with everything you just said, Joelle, and that makes perfect sense for the majority of those who are already on this health journey and they've got things balanced really well. And I think everyone should live in that gray area you mentioned. There are some people, though, who are delusioned thinking that they are in that gray area and they're not sure why they continue to gain weight and why they still feel so terrible. So if you guys haven't listened to the episode with Coach Ari, I would say go back and jump onto that. But I don't want to call it drastic, and I would never promote like this extreme lifestyle, but some of you do need to really take a reality check as far as where most of your calories are coming from, especially if you're not looking and feeling the way that you want to. And one additional point on top of, we talked about overcrowding, but there's also a microbiota component to this where you're feeding the less desirable, and when I say less desirable, I mean the bad bacteria in your gut with those added sugars. And there's a twofold approach to this, or twofold effect with this. One, you're feeding the bad stuff. And the second part of that is you are removing calories from those whole food nutrient dense options that would feed the good bacteria. So there is this imbalance that takes place where the bad continues to creep up. The good becomes outpopulated by the bad. And that's where we start to feel all these digestive, all this discomfort. And something that's not really commonly known is you can change your microbiota, the population and the density of such, pretty rapidly. It almost happens like after that meal because certain bacteria are going to thrive based on what you just consumed. So you can start flipping the script if you do find yourself over consuming sugar and having these gut issues and not feeling good and all these things that are connected to gut health. Within a week, you could see a night and day difference with how you feel and your journey to improving your overall physique.
Next question is from Melissa. She said, I have a question for your next Q&A podcast. I've been a member since the Mindful Movement Collective. So previous to the app, we had MMC, was essentially the programming that we would email out to everybody. Since September, she was doing the hybrid program, which is lifting and running. She loves it. She was seeing a lot of progress with strength and body recomp. Last week, she fell, broke her right arm. She says, I'm looking at a 6 to 8 week recovery. I have a home gym and I'm limited on equipment. I was wondering what I could focus on now during this time that will be helpful for me once I'm able to return to exercise. So for now, she's focusing on protein and fiber, getting outside for walks, and breath work. Is there anything else you would suggest? Thanks for all that you do. That stinks. I'm sorry you broke your arm. My personal take is you probably can still do a decent amount of lower body and or depending on like where your break is, some upper body things and work around the injury. This might be a better question for our athletic trainers in the group, both Tom and Robin. But my take is like you could probably still, to some extent, even if you're not lifting heavy, do some body weight exercises, even just light weights if you can hold it on one side, or maybe you can load it in a different way. Maybe you get a weighted vest or something like that. Like I'm just trying to think outside of the box here. But the good news is it's a lot easier to maintain muscle mass, even if you're not lifting as you were before. So like you can do the bare minimum and maintain pretty well, especially because you're doing those other things like eating enough protein and fiber and getting outside for walks. So that's my take. Maybe you guys
get that lower body jacked. Get that lower body jacked, get those steps up, and like perfect nutrition. Like make it a thing. Like if you feel yourself struggling to not be in the gym as often as you are doing the normal things, like put that energy into just dominating nutrition for this period. And, you know, this might be something you go above and beyond compared to what you typically do when it comes to moderation, but kind of challenge yourself in that regard and say, I am crushing it in these areas until I can get back to my typical routine. But I'm the type of person who that's not quite all or nothing, but I obsess over the things that I want to improve. And if I am limited in some way, I need to put that energy somewhere else that's constructive. So crush your lower body, dominate those daily walks and steps, and absolutely dominate nutrition.
I would also say continue working your non-broken arm. Like, yes, crush lower body too. But I think we talked about this semi recently that if you
couple
work,
podcasts,
if you work like your good side when you have an injury on the other side, there's actually a positive effect on your injured side neuromuscularly and neurologically for you training the left arm if your right arm is broken, and that actually can help with recovery and maintaining strength in your broken side. So I would continue to do exercise still with the arm you can use. Obviously you're going to need to do some unilateral work. Like you're probably not going to do a overhead barbell press, but you could do a, dumbbell shoulder press, let's say.
Yeah, and just to add to the nutrition side, make sure you're not in a calorie deficit. I feel like when people get injured or are out of the gym for whatever reason, their immediate, like, next thing they do is slash calories down because, I'm not burning them, so why am I eating them? You need to recover. Your body needs those calories to recover. So she didn't mention anything about that, but I just want to make sure I highlight that. Like, continue to eat at maintenance and don't slash calories just because you're not lifting heavy right now.
You also have a spike in metabolic rate when you have like a broken bone or an injury or something like that, because your body is putting all of these additional resources there to rebuild tissue, rebuild bone, etc. So you actually might find yourself hungrier and even needing more calories to help with that recovery process.
Most people don't realize you don't burn more calories like from training and from running. It's the things your body's doing functionality wise. It's a tiny fraction compared to just your body functioning.
Whitney asked us, how do I get faster at running shorter distances? I'm doing really good at 30 minutes of a steady paced run, although I'm slow. I run 1.5 miles for the military physical fitness test every single year. I'm gassed, feeling like I'm about to die every single year when I complete it. I'd really like to not feel that way. So to get faster at running, you have to run faster. And I know that kind of goes against, like, you hear a lot about zone 2 running and just running slow and embracing that. And yes, we want to build our base. You have your base for this test, right? So we want to make sure we're including tempo work and speed work in our regular programming. So that would be my advice, is to just have, it depends how many times you run throughout the week, but let's say you're running 3 times per week right now, have one session be a speed work session and focus on having intervals at those faster paces. And then you will get to the point where you will be able to run that 1.5 miles at a faster pace without feeling like you're dying. Maybe not dying as much, because obviously for something like that's your race, right? That's your test. So you're going to get to a point where you feel shitty because it's a race day. But it can help you get faster and maybe feel a little less shitty.
So what would that interval session look like? Is that like a 30-second sprint, 30-second cool down, or is it like over the course of a longer run, I'm sprinting for 30 seconds and then I'm walking for a minute and a half, but for the course of like 40 minutes?
There's so many ways you can implement speed work. Both of those would work. You can do short bursts of it to start. So like you said, like even 20 seconds at a faster pace, and then having a recovery period and repeating that however many times throughout the session. But there's really no, like, it depends on your distance and it depends like what you're training for. So like for a distance this short, you can get away with shorter intervals at a much faster speed. And I would do that speed work on a treadmill to start, just to kind of, that will really help ensure that you're at the pace and speed that you need to be. It's just an easy way to zone out, rather than like if you were to go out for a run, you really have to pay attention to what your watch is saying and make sure you're reaching the zones that you need to be in. So that's my advice. There's so many different tempo speed workouts out there that you could implement, and it really doesn't matter too much as long as you're doing it. All right, next question. Letitia says, what causes heart rate to be so variable? For example, if I wake up and down an applesauce pouch and then I immediately do my cardio, my heart rate gets higher, faster, more easily versus when I do it later in the day. What are your guys' thoughts on this one?
I have no clue.
I was
Can you read that again?
To be
Yes.
honest, I've reread that question a few times. So she's saying that when she wakes up and has applesauce and then does her cardio, her heart rate gets higher, faster.
She can get her heart rate up faster in the morning after her applesauce pouch versus if she were to do it later in the day, it takes her body longer to get her heart rate up higher.
So that could just be.
But is that with or without the applesauce? Like I don't know. I don't know what the applesauce interplay is.
She's eaten throughout the day, so I think she was just saying she's not training fasted. Maybe.
I think time of day is going to play a role in that. So workouts are going to feel as though they're same workout could feel harder or easier depending on when you're training. So the fact that you're waking up earlier, doing this on the earlier side, just having that pouch of applesauce, there's not a ton of fuel in that. It might feel a bit more difficult to do anything. So it's going to take less effort to elevate your heart rate versus toward the end of the day, you're fully fueled. You might just naturally feel better in the evening, toward the evening, more of a night owl. Just, I think your body responding differently to the same stimuli could be affecting. And that's like kind of like training on a hot day versus a cold day or versus an average temperature day. Your body's just responding differently based on that time.
So the other thing I want to add here is just a reframe on the fact that she mentioned her heart rate getting higher, faster, and more easily, because I think it sounds like she's like, oh, in the morning, I can get my heart rate up faster, which is a good thing. But getting your heart rate up faster and more, quote, easily actually means that the work is harder for your body. So you saying I struggle to get my heart rate up later on in the day is actually... there's two possibilities. Either A, you're not working as hard, which I doubt, or your body is just not feeling as taxed by doing the same work than it was doing first thing in the morning, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No,
So you're saying that's technically the progression or regression.
Right.
Right.
All right, next question is from Chelsea. She said, how do you improve your cardiovascular health? I realize this was kind of vague. I feel out of breath going up a couple flights of stairs or just running around with the kids. The most basic response to this is to do cardio, and I know that's kind of like, duh,
vague.
Alessandra. But you just start with doing cardio, even adding in one session per week, which I think we talked about in the last episode or a couple back, can make such a big difference if you're not doing any right now. And, if you notice you're winded going up the stairs, you're winded from doing these seemingly like normal tasks, it's a sign that you do need to do that. So I would prioritize cardio in this season and kind of just make sure you add that in, even if it's one time per week for 30 minutes, just to start there. You're going to notice a pretty rapid difference. It's going to happen quick, which is cool. But yeah, that's my vague answer.
Start doing it. And then, if it's something where like, I don't have any extra time, I'm getting my 2 training sessions in, I can't sneak in the cardio. Like, as you're playing with the kids, make it a game to run up and down the stairs 10 times. Like, just do that. Carry them up the stairs, add resistance. You can do that for 10 minutes straight, and they're going to be laughed. They'll slide down if you got carpets, slide down on their butts, slide down on their bellies, and just make it a big, fun game. So do what you can do. Integrate the parent workouts when you need to and where you need to. If you literally have no time, like, that is a very simple way to get it in, is use those stairs. They're making you winded. Build on it.
This is also a great example of, like, for all we know, and I happen to know she's a client, so my guess is she has like a step goal that she's hitting with her coach. But this is a great example of, like, she might already be getting 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day, but because that is not really structured, get your heart rate up, more intense cardio sessions, you're still having that same fatigue or breathlessness when you're walking up the stairs. So that's a great example of, like, look, walking is great, but it's not intense cardio that's going to really improve your cardiovascular fitness in that way.
Kelly asked us, is the Oura ring worth the investment? And you're asking 3 people who all have Oura rings. So I'm sure we will tell you yes. These questions, well, I'll give you my opinion, but if something is worth it for me, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be worth it for you. So just keep that in mind. But if you're somebody who's looking for this additional data when it comes to tracking steps, tracking your heart rate, tracking your readiness score, tracking your sleep, if you track your cycle through it, it is a worthy investment for us, because I love that data. I love being able to see what this ring is coming up with every day, and also pairing that with my personal ratings of biofeedback to be like, hey, this is how I feel today, this is what's working, this is what isn't working, this is what my cycle is doing. So for me, it is a worthy investment. I'm on my second one. I've had it since 2019, I think I want to say.
Yeah, same.
I have a full video review on YouTube if you're interested in, like, my full thoughts. But yeah, I love this thing. I wish everybody could have one who wants one.
Yeah, I mean, I've also been wearing one since 2019, and I also love it from just like a data junkie standpoint. Like, it's cool to see the data. Granted, like, you do have to take any wearable data with a grain of salt. I don't think that it should be running your life. Like, there's plenty of times that I open up my Aura scores and it's like, you should take it easy today. And I'm like, that's nice. I'm a mom. I have a lower body workout scheduled for today, and I have 2 businesses to run. So, like, not really going to happen.
Nope.
So there's always, like, take it with a grain of salt, because right now in this season of life, Aura would be like, take a rest today, take a rest today, take a rest today. And I'd be resting for the next 10 years. So I do think the data is really cool, but I also want to just say the data should never trump your own, like, biofeedback. And by the same token, your Aura ring might be like Alessandra, you posted about this the other day, that your Aura scores were great, but you're like, I feel like shit today.
Yeah.
And, like, I wouldn't want you, if you were like, I feel like I need to take a rest day today because pregnancy's kicking my ass today, but Aura was like, no, go work out. You did great. Like, I don't think that the Aura should trump how you were feeling. So all of that to say, love the data, but take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, it's a supporting metric. It's something that's,
Yes.
if I'm feeling a certain way, like, what does the data say? Is it backing that up? What are the longer term trends? I think those are going to be more helpful. Long term, what is this? Is it improving? Is it, coming back down? Are the things that I've implemented making any measurable changes in my life? Wind's going nuts over here if you guys can't hear that.
I was going to say, I don't think they can hear it.
I don't hear it
because we have our mics on, but the
House
wind
is shaking.
ripping.
So, I mean, I like it. Like I said, I kind of use it for a reinforcement. Like, I'm feeling a little off. Is there anything that was flagged? So I've been sleeping great the past week. My HRV, for whatever reason, is way down. I've been very tired, not like sluggish, but very, very, like, ready to go to sleep by 6:30.
Like, I look at him and I'm like, are you okay? Are you sick? And he's just like,
when I called you at like,
Not good.
I don't know, the other day, Josh, I called you about something like after I put the kids down for bed. So it was probably like 7:15. You looked like it was 12 o'clock. You looked
Drugged.
like it was midnight.
Drugged.
Are you asleep right now?
That might have been after I read Kai. We were in the middle of the Magic Treehouse series. This was 7:30. I'm reading the chapter, falling asleep. I literally would have fallen asleep in his bed if I just laid there with my eyes closed. I'm like, sorry, buddy.
He came out to the couch to read his own book and fell asleep on the couch.
Holding the book. So this is by like 7:40. I'm holding the book asleep. So something's been off. I was about to be sick last week or the week before this. And I fought him like, nope, mindset. I'm fine. I'm following Brant's lead. Built different. Built different. Not going to hit me. And it didn't. I was like pre-sick. That passed.
Yes.
This past week, I'm sleeping like a brick. I wake up, trouble getting out of bed. I'm okay during the day. And then by the early evening, I am exhausted. Like not body wise, but like ready to sleep. So something's been off. My HRV is extremely low. Something's happening. I don't know what it is right now.
This
I'm grinding through
happens
it.
every time I get pregnant, and it's just your sympathy pregnancy symptoms.
It's probably true.
that must
Super
be it.
annoying.
This is a team. Being pregnant is a team thing over here.
I do think that Alessandra, well, both of you, did you both just see did you get an email from Aura about the sick detection stuff?
I missed that.
So we got an email from Aura like a day or two ago that was announcing sick detection to catch data trends, Josh, and exactly what you just described, where you have that like pre-sick where you're like, my temperature spiked a little, my HRVs are way down, my heart rate is way up, I'm not sleeping great. You're like, I feel really fatigued. Like when you have that, like, I feel like I'm getting sick, that now Aura is picking up that data and they'll detect like, hey, we think you're about to be sick.
That's
I'm like,
wild.
That's so cool.
So here's what I don't like about that though.
Okay.
You get that up here.
Yeah,
and
Josh
we're going to
is very
speak it into existence.
superstitious.
That's not superstition. That's not superstition.
it's a little
Thoughts
superstitious.
become things, to quote the great Kai Green.
The great Josh Skudnick.
Kai Green. I stole that from Kai Green.
You're not allowed to put anything out into the atmosphere around Josh that he's like nervous about. Like,
Yeah, I did
can't
not
even-
know this until like a few weeks ago.
Very
I'm big on
superstitious.
I'm big on manifesting, but there's a difference. Like you don't count your chickens before they're hatched.
Yeah.
That's just, it's always been a mindset thing for me. And I'm very big, like my parents were always, anytime I was sick, anytime I had something going on,
was
it's
like,
like
"Just
mind over
believe
matter.
you're not."
Mind over matter. Like just believe it. So that's been ingrained into me for my
Alessandra,
entire
just
life.
believe you're not pregnancy tired.
right? Like, okay.
Send some of that my way. I'm pregnancy tired.
All
Oh,
of that
man.
to say, we are Aura fans. Take it with a grain of
Yes.
salt, but the data that you can collect and the trends that you can collect is cool and helpful.
Yeah.
I just can't wait till we're not pregnant anymore.
I'm going to hurt you after this episode.
We're not pregnant anymore. Yeah.
That's what I said. I said where?
Yeah. Her.
We.
You're not
It's a we. It's a we.
Okay, we're moving on before I get angry. Nicole asked us how to increase maintenance calories without gaining fat. I'm currently around 1,800 calories, lift 4 times a week, 10K steps per day, lacking in the cardio department, not going to lie. This is kind of a good case for a reverse diet, in my opinion. I think you can work them up slowly, and how slow or how fast kind of depends on your level of comfortability. Is that a word? Sure. So I would slowly increase over time and maybe add in some cardio if you feel like you want to and can use some improvement there. But, as far as just focusing on the nutrition side, you can work up slowly and you should be okay. And remember that maintenance is a range. I think we touched on this maybe last Q&A. So even though you're currently maintaining around 1880, you likely can maintain a little bit higher than that too.
Yeah, you might be able to hop up to 2,200 calories and not see any weight gain. So I know you said like how to increase to maintenance without gaining fat. Look, there is a possibility that after you get to a certain point of calories that there will be some scale increases. But I also want to point out that if you are fluctuating within 1 to 2 pounds, you likely haven't really gained fat. Like as you increase calories, you're likely going to increase carbohydrates as well. And as you increase carbohydrates, you're going to increase the amount of water that your body holds as a whole. I don't mean that in like a bloating type of way, just a total body water. So a lot of the time, even when we just increase calories, if part of those calories are coming from carbohydrates, we might see an increase on the scale. I would urge you to not freak out about that.
I think doing something like that for a lot of people is harder than fat loss. At least for a lot of our clients, just the mental side of like eating more food, seeing that scale increase potentially. So yeah, all of those things in mind, you have to do it in a way that feels comfortable, whether that's slower increases or jumping up a little bit in bigger increments. Yeah, it's not right versus wrong. It's just like, what are you most comfortable with?
Yeah, and you might have more flexibility initially. Say your first couple weeks, you bump that up 200 calories, and then from there, you just want to be consistent. Like, I want to just see this thing go up, and you're monitoring scale, and it's 150 or 100 calories week over week. It's going to add up over time. So they might, even if you went like 50, like that's pretty negligible. But over time, over a few weeks, over 5 weeks, that's another 250 calories. So being consistent, again, tracking the data if you're really worried about putting weight back on, just making sure that you're weighing in on a daily basis so you're getting that weekly average. People don't realize like you weigh in once a week. You could be weighing in on a fluctuation day, high or low, and it could be completely different the following week. So if you can get over the mental hurdle of getting on the scale every day, don't be obsessive about it. Just use it as a data point. What is it today, tomorrow? Take that average every single week, and then just make sure that you're not seeing anything crazy happen as you bump calories up, and continue.
Okay, we have 3 more. Kaylee said, when working on heavy deadlifts, how do you distinguish between general fatigue in your back, soreness from lifting, versus putting strain on your back in the movement? I think this comes up often, and I think this comes up, like a lot of people are like, well, my back really hurts after deadlifts. They are a back exercise. So your back will probably be sore after them. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But how do you distinguish between that fatigue and soreness versus actual strain? Soreness is going to go away. So it might linger for a day or two post deadlift day. But if you're having pain or strain or just more of that extreme soreness, I would say, for days after, or it lasts like a full week after, then you probably tweaked something. So I would say use the time frame as your way to distinguish between the two, but it's also completely normal to be sore in your lower back or upper back post deadlift day.
Yeah. And I would say, like, I think when people feel muscle soreness, like when you feel soreness in your legs after, 2 days after a leg day, or you feel soreness in your shoulders after an upper body day, a day or two later, typically that you're like, I didn't tear my rotator cuff. Like this is soreness from my workout. Like it's typically a certain type of feeling. I think when people feel that in their back, they panic a little because they're like, did I hurt myself? So if you're newer to lifting, that might be harder to distinguish because you might also not be used to that like muscle soreness or that DOMS feeling. But with time, you should be able to decipher, like, did I hurt myself versus is this just muscle soreness? And if it's just muscle soreness, and like Alessandra said, it goes away in a day or two, I wouldn't really worry about it.
Just focus on making sure you're bracing, right? You're going through, enough warming up, especially with a heavier deadlift day. You're not just jumping right into a heavy set, and you're keeping form optimal.
Lucy asked us, how do you make squats challenging enough with just dumbbells when you're used to squatting heavy with the barbell? I know slowing down tempo, etc. helps, but I'm worried about losing my squat progress when I no longer have access to a squat rack.
Go single leg. Squat back onto a bench, make modifications. That's like the easiest way to make it harder is do single leg box squats with dumbbells. And then you probably don't have dumbbells you probably have more weight with your dumbbells for those single leg than you would actually need.
My follow-up question would be, are you worried about losing squat progress or are you worried about losing leg size and strength?
Gotcha.
Because if you're worried about losing barbell squat progress and you are not barbell squatting, you're going to lose some barbell squat progress, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to lose strength or endurance or size in your legs if you are doing other types of squats or other types of unilateral work and Bulgarians and lunges and whatever else. So I think that's what I would want to distinguish. There is a law of specificity when it comes to exercise selection. Like if you want to get better at running, you're not going to get better at running by doing the Stairmaster. You have to run. So if you're wanting to maintain specifically barbell squat strength, but you're not barbell squatting, there might be a little bit of loss of strength there neuromuscularly from not training that same pattern to that same degree. But again, that does not mean that you are destined to lose all of your leg strength or your glute gains or any of that, because there's many other exercises and many other ways to overload.
And you can also boost your squatting potential during this phase. Let's say you do end up going back to the barbell by neutralizing some potential muscular imbalances. So by doing those unilateral leg movements, you can enhance that weaker side. And then when you go back to barbell squatting, you've got a sturdier foundation. You have more potential for that squat.
And just in my experience, like obviously I had to train very specific for powerlifting too. So after periods of not doing barbell squats, it does tend to come back fairly quickly as long as you are focusing on keeping that overall lower body strength up. So yeah, you might feel a little bit weaker for the first month or first 6 weeks getting back to barbell squats, but you will get back to it and you can get strong in that specific exercise again.
You could build a nice heavy goblet squat. If you have some heavy dumbbells, you could get into a real good goblet
set some
squat.
Goals like outside of back squat goals and make it fun for yourself. All right, last question of the day. It's a good one. Miranda asked, thoughts on caffeine in the morning and how it relates with overall health and cortisol. I see this is a big topic currently, and I'm wondering your thoughts. I typically do water first and or electrolytes, and then I allow myself caffeine in the morning. Should you wait a certain amount of time or have breakfast first? I've heard so many things that you should do to help with cortisol levels. Is this a thing?
Specifically to being up and allowing yourself to kind of regulate and naturally entering your circadian rhythm. Like I don't personally wake up and drink coffee. I allow myself to wake up first, kind of like you just mentioned, wake up, water, electrolytes. But even then, like I've found for most people, that sweet spot, as far as not too early, not too late, tends to be in that 8 to 10 o'clock range. Your half-life in caffeine is what, 12 hours. So you still have caffeine in your system. If you have it at noon, potentially into midnight, it's a decent amount, especially if it's more than one cup. So just as far as getting up, not becoming reliant on it for that wake up process, allowing you to optimize your circadian rhythm, I wouldn't like dive right into that. Typically, again, 8 to 10 a.m. for most people, and give yourself an hour or two after waking up, in my personal experience.
I want to add a piece about the cortisol side of things, because I know the big, like, you don't want to spike your cortisol in the morning. So first of all, your cortisol is supposed to be high in the morning. I'm not telling you to like spike it with coffee, but cortisol spiking in the morning is supposed to happen. It's called a cortisol awakening response. And so it in and of itself is a big part of, like Josh said, our circadian rhythm, our morning energy. And so we don't necessarily want to avoid this morning cortisol spike. If we were to do cortisol testing and we didn't see high cortisol in the morning with the awakening response, that would be problematic. We'd have to be addressing those cortisol levels. So I think there's this like fear around like high cortisol in the morning. It's like, wait, actually your cortisol is supposed to be highest in the morning. That's what gets you like alert and ready for the day.
That's actually one of the benefits with the morning cold plunges, is you're spiking cortisol early, and then it keeps it down a bit throughout the day.
Josh
so
is
another
not
plus for
I'm
going to get Joelle on either raw milk or cold plunges by the end of this year. That's my or next year, 2025. Like Joelle does one.
I feel like we got to start making like a bingo card for people when they're listening to the podcast, and like, did Josh mention a cold plunge? Oop, cross it off the bingo card. I hit bingo. Like, I think it comes up in every episode somehow, Josh.
You keep bringing up things that are like, hey, cold plunge is going to do that for you. Morning cold plunge, get that cortisol up, another benefit.
So all of that to say, as always, we're a big fan of like context and nuance. I think context matters. If you are living like a fairly low stress lifestyle, you're in a well-fed state, you're not a chronic dieter or chronic undereater, I don't think that some caffeine in the morning is going to be this like massive detriment. But if we're talking about like general fasted physiology versus like fed physiology, and you are a chronic undereater, over exercising, quote, under eating, living in a stressed state, I would not advise that you are in a fasted state in the morning and then jumping straight to caffeine without food. And now that caffeine is further blunting your like hunger cues. And now you're not eating till 4 p.m. and whatever. Like if this person who's like necessary, and I'm not saying the person who asked, but like overall the person's main issue that I just described, if they're like under eating, not recovering in a chronically stressed state, their issue is energy, lack of energy availability is what I'm trying to say. So if we are then diving into the coffee first, like that's what could potentially be a detriment. I think, again, just like context matters. I think generally speaking, it's probably good to have some food in your stomach and like wake up and get yourself settled, get some food in your belly, have some water like she mentioned she was doing. But I also think like if you wake up and drink coffee, it's probably not going to kill you.
Yeah. And also coffee isn't in itself dehydrating, which I think a lot of people still believe that. So it's okay if you wake up and have coffee. Like it's not dehydrating you more, but is water
But
gonna
also
hurt?
coffee is not a
No.
meal. Like that is not breakfast. That is not your meal.
That may impact your appetite too. So if you have coffee and then you don't eat breakfast for a few hours or like 4 or 5 hours later because you're full from your coffee and you're not hungry, that can definitely be the negative side of things that we kind of want to avoid.
Yeah, like now we're waking up, we're having that coffee, we haven't drank enough water, the coffee is making us not really hungry, so now we're skipping breakfast. Now it's 2:00 in the afternoon, you haven't had any fiber, any protein, any nutrients because you delayed a meal because you had the coffee and whatever. So like if it means you skipping nutrients or skipping meals or whatever, get some food in your belly first before you have that coffee. But that might feel really individual for people.
Yeah. All right. That was the last one today, guys. Good questions. As a reminder, if you want to ask us questions, join the Facebook group. Have you been linking it, Josh? I'm not sure if it's already linked, but I don't think it has been linked in the show notes. So we will make sure to link it in the show notes.
If you're making sure, you better confirm it. Let's see.
I don't think it is. But you can also comment. If you're a Spotify listener, you can leave a comment on the podcast now, which is cool. So feel free to leave questions there too. I will be checking those. But yeah.
It is
we got our first Spotify comment about Josh and I's raw milk debate.
You guys loved the raw milk debate. It was a hot topic.
I had to go back and listen to him. Like, why is everyone talking about the raw milk part? Guess it was pretty funny.
He didn't understand. He's like, why is everyone saying that I'm so funny? Or like,
I didn't say why am I so awesome and funny and hilarious. Did not say that, guys. Never said that.
That's not what I meant.
People like you said something like the straight from the teat.
Straight from the teat. I forgot. I blacked out.
I don't think you say things. You don't try to be funny when you say things. They just come out that way. So, anywho.
You're just so naturally funny, Josh.
You're the funniest.
You don't even have to try. Funny enough, I'll just mention this because someone sent it to me this morning. She goes, after the podcast, had to send you this. Child in possible H5N1 case drank raw milk. And basically there is now a human case of H1N1 or H5N1 bird flu in California because the child drank infected raw milk.
Is this what you sent me last week?
No. This is just a different case of raw milk being disgusting.
There was a recall, so we said no raw milk till the new year.
Not giving it to your
that
kids.
was in relation to egg. Well,
no, they say don't give it to young kids because obviously you're more susceptible if there is anything in there to be able to fight that off.
The child has since recovered, but an investigation into whether the illness was triggered by bird flu, blah, 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 whatever. Anyway. Benefits, risks.
Just so good. So delicious. I actually drink the raw milk in my cold plunge. I sip it. I sip it in my cold plunge.
And then you sit in your sauna.
And I sit. No,
just
we don't.
biohack your way
we don't
to
sauna,
longevity.
We don't sauna after the cold plunge. You can cold plunge after the sauna, but you want to let your body reheat naturally after the cold plunge to really maximize the benefits.
Do you wear your amber colored blue light blockers too at night to biohack your way into better sleep?
No.
Oh, you're like the biohacking expert.
No, all our lights are obviously already amber.
All the lights in our house are just
our light
red
bulbs
lights.
are amber. But like,
you know what I do
our
want?
bedroom is.
You know what my next
You
thing
have
is?
amber lights in your bedroom?
In the bedroom, yeah.
Are they?
Yeah.
Are
They're
they
actually
amber?
Yeah, they're energy efficient. They're 99.9% free of blue light. Very energy efficient, and they're just nice.
That
like
1% is gonna get you.
it's very calming.
It is.
Well, two
it is
things.
Nice.
Two things
It's
on
a
my
vibe.
list. If you guys want to get me anything for Christmas, the full body red light and a hyperbaric chamber.
Doesn't
That's
Alex
peaked.
do the red light stuff?
That's piqued
Does
my
all of
interest.
it.
That's
Alex
piqued my
does
interest.
the cryo, the hyperbaric chambers. The
Alex
She
is
does
on
the
the
hyperbaric.
podcast. All right, listen.
does
Alex
all of
is
it.
on the
She goes-
podcast
yeah.
on the 18th, so
Yes,
we will
I
have a
can
nice
get her in.
conversation.
yeah, she's doing the hyperbaric. Alex drinks all the Kool-Aid on all the self-care, longevity, biohacking stuff for sure.
I'm trying to make my face stop aging. I'm trying to figure that one out.
That I could get down with. That I could fix. Yeah.
Fix my face.
How do I make my face not look 90 in the next?
You better fix
10
your
years?
face, or I'm going to fix it for you.
Well, I just look at pictures of my face pre-kids and post-kids, and I'm like, wow, you've aged.
I told you about going to Boston with her
We
sister.
took a selfie and we were like, ugh.
I was so upset. We got Botox the next week.
Look like that.
Like you look at yourself throughout the day, like I look the same as when I was in college, and then we saw that, and I was so upset.
No, it was
It
really
was
sad.
it was
I mean, in a
bad.
sense, I'm like, oh wow, we're aging nicely. Like you look back at your pictures from like college, and you're like, we look so much better now. But then you look back at your pictures from like just pre-kids, and you're like, oh, not sure I look better now.
What happened to my face?
Yeah,
Those little
anyway.
gremlins.
Alex does all that too. We'll talk to her about her facials and her crazy skincare routines and all of that.
Well, whatever she was planning on talking about, you can throw that out the window.
I'm sure
Alex,
that was
call you
it.
on, talk about all of the crazy things that you do each week.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
I'm interested.
All right, you guys. 3-episode rule. Josh, you didn't drop it yet today, did you?
Have you been practicing, Joel?
Yeah. So if you've listened to at least 3 episodes, you have permission and encouragement to leave a review of the podcast. If you've listened to at least 3 episodes, you're obviously getting loads of value out of the podcast. So you might as well leave a 5-star review and nothing less. And even take it one step further, go share your review. Share the podcast. Share it all. Share it on Instagram. Share it on TikTok. Share it to your friends and family. Share it to your group chats. But only after you've listened to at least 3 episodes.
Speaking of TikTok,
How's
our
that,
TikTok
Josh?
is taken off.
That's pretty good.
You guys follow us on TikTok, the Fitness League podcast. I'm working really hard over there. But it's all
cracked
it's
the
all
2
podcast
a.m.
clips.
code.
I have cracked it. No, but I feel like we've gotten some new followers from TikTok, which is cool. And it's, if you like just hearing our straight up like quick hitter tips and clips, that's all it is.
Tips and tits. That's
At
what
Joelle
TikTok
Samantha.
is. Tips and tits at Joelle Samantha.
I was just jumping into like, so where could they find you? At Joelle Samantha.
You still got to work on my.
Alessandra Skutnik. You don't.
Where
like
can they
my-
find you guys?
Alessandra Skutnik.
Joelle Samantha?
I'm at Josh Skutnik.
See you guys in the next episode.
And everything else you need is linked in the show notes.
She
Oh, yeah, I
keeps
forgot to
messing
say.
that up.